Hello everybody, this is Tip-Top MTG here today with another custom Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at 10 custom Magic the Gathering cards found on the r/custom magic subreddit, which you can find a link to in the description down below. And we're going to look at them, and I'm going to give you my opinions on them, talk about why they might be cool, why they might be overpowered, underpowered. We're going to talk a lot about it, very similar to like a spoiler season type of video. So why don't we jump right into this? Starting off, we have Goldbeard, Splendid, Splendor, or Splendid Spender, sorry. You can see who designed the card in the upper left. That is their Reddit username. I did not design any of the cards in this video, so you guys should go check out all of these people because they do pretty good work. So he's a 3-cost red legendary creature, human pirate 3/2, and when he enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. And then whenever you cast a spell, if mana produced by 3 or more treasures was spent to cast it, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for that copy. So this is a mono red kind of treasure deck that is going to care about instants and sorceries and treasures. So it's kind of an interesting mix. You want to be able to create treasure tokens and you want to be able to cast instants and sorceries. And this is actually a pretty good effect. I mean, it's kind of encouraging you to ramp with treasures, which is something red is liking to do. So I think that this is actually quite unique in its design. I mean, you know, copying spells is something that can always feel really good. It's something that inherently gets you value, and it's something that red doesn't do a lot. Like red copies things, obviously that is one of the 2 colors that really does that, but it just feels very, I don't know how to describe it. It feels very unique in its way of doing it. You know, it itself creates the first treasure, but you have to figure out 2 other ways. So you have to figure out a way to balance your deck between treasure producers and instants and sorceries. Now, generally, by the way, when I look at these custom cards, I'm thinking about them through the lens of Commander. And that's just because it's a casual format, and if you're going to play a custom commander or custom card anywhere, it's probably going to be there. I do think about them in other senses occasionally, but I think as a commander, it's definitely very interesting. I'm not a huge fan of monocolored commanders. Like, I don't hate them, obviously, but I prefer multicolor. But honestly, this one is done in such a way that it feels interesting, even though it all fits within one color slice of the color pie. And I think that shows really good card design. Next, we have Phoenix of Paradise. So this is a 1-cost red non-legendary creature, Phoenix, 0/1 with flying, and you can tap and sack it to add 1 mana of any color, and then you can cast it from your graveyard. Now, this card is inherently incredibly broken. Now, this was obvious. This was a reference to, I think, someone saying you should always bolt the bird, and they're like, well, do you want to bolt this bird? Because you can just sack it, add 1 mana of any color, and cast it from your graveyard. So yeah, this thing is very clearly broken, because you can tap, sack, add 1 mana of any color, and then add red, and then cast it from your graveyard, and then it re-enters. So you get infinite creature deaths and ETBs, which if you get any card that cares about either of those, you just get infinite anything. So this card is very broken, but I think it has an interesting concept. I mean, if you did tap, sacrifice Phoenix of Paradise, add, you know, some other color that wasn't red, like just a specific color, add blue, then you couldn't cast it with the mana. Like, it would still be highly powerful. And maybe you say you can cast it once per turn, or maybe you give it escape. I think escape is a really good way of this for this to actually be balanced. If you did tap, sack, add 1 mana of any color, escape, you know, 2 red, and then exile 4 other cards from your graveyard, boom, now you can't just super easily do this. Like, it's still fairly easy, but I think that would have been an interesting design to a card that right now is very clearly a joke card. And I just thought there was some interesting ways it could be improved, so I thought I would include it. Next, we have Skaro the Burs. It's a Gruul 2-cost legendary creature, rat shaman. It says spells you control can't be the target of spells or abilities. And that includes your stuff, so you can't target your own spells with spells or abilities. So this is very much a I don't want you to touch my stuff kind of deck, and it can be very powerful. But I just want to kind of highlight, like, while I think that the wording of this is interesting, it's kind of giving shroud to your stuff. It's not super interesting itself. Like, it's not something that I go, ooh, I would want to build that. That seems like a card I would throw in a deck. But you know, it isn't necessarily something that I go, ooh, I want that to lead my deck. So I think as a card fitting within another deck, I think it's very, very good, assuming your deck doesn't want to do stuff with your own spells or abilities. And yeah, so just I think it's better not as a commander, which I think it makes sense. Next, we have Absolute Decree. It's a 6-cost white and blue instant, and it says exile all spells, activated or triggered abilities, and attacking creatures. Exile all cards from all graveyards. So essentially, murder whatever your opponent is doing. If they're casting dangerous spells, get rid of them. And like if they are attacking with creatures, then get rid of them. If they're doing things with their graveyard, get rid of it. So this is essentially the I'm stopping what's happening right now card. And I think that's interesting. And I think there's potential for it. The double coloredness of it does affect how easy it is to cast. I actually don't know if this would be super broken. I mean, you have to compare it to other spells. Exile all spells, activated or triggered abilities on the stack for 6 mana. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, it's not just countering, it's exiling, so it gets around all of the can't be countered. And then exile all attacking creatures. That is kind of like Settle the Wreckage, but it's not giving them lands in return, so that would probably also be a 6-cost effect. And then exile all cards from all graveyards. Yeah, that one's not too insane, but I just feel like this is combining too many effects into one. I think if it was maybe choose one or choose two, maybe you could argue it, but I think doing all of it is a little crazy. But yeah, it is equal, so it will exile your stuff if you have stuff, and yeah, I don't know, it's very different than anything else I've really seen, so I think it has that going for it. Next, we have Thoop High Celebrant. It's a 3-cost red legendary creature, Kobold Cleric 1/2. By the way, this whole thing has partner. At the beginning of each player's end step, if that player controls a creature with power 4 or greater, create a 0/1 red Kobold creature token, sacrifice a Kobold, add red. So this is actually pretty crazy. A 3-cost spell in red that's going to repeatedly create 0/1s. Which, by the way, are essentially just treasure tokens. So you're saying at the beginning of each player's end step, if they control a creature with power 4 or greater, create a treasure token. And then this thing has partners. So if you have another partner, there's now lots of them, so I can't tell you if there's one that is a kobold or that can produce kobolds or anything. I don't think so, but there is lots of potential there. You can maybe boost up your opponent's creatures to make sure they always have creatures with power 4 or greater. I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I feel like for 3 mana, it might be a little pushed, but then again, you can't guarantee that they're going to have creatures with power 4 or greater. So I think it really depends on the rest of the deck, which I think leads to good commanders, where this one is like kind of okay, but I'm sure there are some cool combinations with partner that just really open up this card. Next, we have Stormland. It's a land, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and then you can tap and add colorless, and when this mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to each player. So, at first I was like, oh, this is really good, but then I thought about it, and you are having a land enter the battlefield tapped, and it doesn't produce any colored mana, and it's dealing damage to you. So I think you definitely need to be in the right kind of deck to play this, and I love those cards. I love the cards that are just kind of niche little inclusions that aren't going to go in every deck, but if your deck happens to like this, if you can, give this land lifelink or something, and now you're actually like gaining 4 life for every spell you cast, go for it. But it's not a super duper powerful card, and I really appreciate that. Next, we have Nile, Guardian of the Tomb. It's a 5-cost legendary artifact creature, Golem 3/5. So this is a colorless commander. It says lands you control have tap, pay 2 life, add colorless, and lose all other abilities. So you're turning all of your lands into ancient tombs, so you can get a ton of mana. Like, assuming you spent 5 lands to cast him, the next turn you get 10 mana. So if you can do something crazy with 10 mana, you do also lose 10 life. So I do think it is a little crazy. The issue I see with this card, like at a conceptual level, is first off, it has to be a colorless thing. So it's an Eldrazi or an Ugin, which is definitely fine. Like an Ugin, turn 5 is not awful. But the big issue I have here is that whatever you're going to do, you better hope that it works. Because if you get counterspelled or anything, you just paid a ton of life to just do nothing. And so it's one of those things where you have 1 or 2 turns after you cast this to kind of win the game, or at least get a board state where you can win the game. And then after that, you're kind of out of luck unless you can get rid of Nile here, because you're going to be like lowering your life so much. So yeah, I think that because of that, I wouldn't really like this. But I think if you had a way of controlling Nile, like if you had some way to flicker him or turn off the ability, or if you could maybe pay some life and like make him go away for a turn, maybe, I don't know. He just doesn't seem like the kind of guy I would play, but I think he explores a space that we really don't have, which is colorless super ramp, but also at the cost of your life. So yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. Next, we have Jackpot. It's a 1-cost red enchantment, and you can pay two mana, one being a red, and you can exile Jackpot. And if you have 7 cards in your hand, 7 cards in your graveyard, and 7 cards in your library, you win the game. So if you get this crazy thing to happen, you win the game. But then you can pay 2 mana and choose 1, 3, 5, or 7 at random, and then exile that many cards from your hand, graveyard, or the top of your library. So you can hopefully get to 7/7/7 and win the game. This card is honestly hilarious. And of course, you don't have to just use that 1, 3, 5, 7 ability to, like make this happen. You can, of course, like 7 cards in your hand is easy. You just draw over 7, and then at your end, you'll discard. 7 cards in your library is very difficult, especially when you have to have 7 cards in your graveyard. So essentially, you have to exile cards from your library. You can't mill them really at all, or you have to get down to like 14 cards in your library, and the rest in your graveyard. Exile your graveyard, then use a spell that mills you by half, and then you have to have 7 cards in hand. Pretty crazy, honestly. But I think it's really fun. It's the kind of thing that I like, where it's very janky in nature, but maybe there's a way you can consistently do it. And then we have Joey, Grovekeeper. It's a 3-cost Gruul, legendary creature, elemental turtle, 2/4. And it says non-basic lands lose all abilities and gain. Tap, add any color of mana to your mana pool. Each opponent gains 1 life. And then whenever a player gains life, Joey deals 1 damage to target creature. So very interesting, where you're trying to give your opponent's life. He's also fixing your mana. Now, I think in not a like Gruul deck, if you're in like a 5-color Joda deck, I think this is a really awesome card, because it like helps you fix your mana. But inside of like a Joey deck, I think it also is very interesting. It's kind of a space where you're trying to give your opponent's life to do removal. Now it is whenever a player gains life, so that includes you. You could just make yourself gain life, but if you can make everybody gain life, you're going to be doing really well. For instance, whenever you tap a land, each of your opponents gains 1 life, and you get to deal 3 damage to target creature, or 3 damage spread out. So yeah, pretty crazy actually when I think about it, because if you have 5 lands, you tap them, you have 3 opponents, then each opponent's going to gain 5 life. You're going to deal 15 damage. So just Joey can keep this going. Now I will say Joey deals 1 damage to target creature. It does not say may, or up to 1 target creature. So if you run out of targets and Joey is the only thing left, you do have to start killing Joey whenever people gain life. So keep that in mind. Next, we have Ghost Train. It's a 3-cost artifact vehicle, and it says exile any number of creature cards from your graveyard with total power 2 or more. Ghost Train becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. And as long as Ghost Train is not crewed, it can't be blocked. So essentially, it gives you an ability to crew it with things from your graveyard, by exiling them. But if it gets crewed by things in your graveyard, it can't be blocked because it's a Ghost Train. It's crewed by things from the graveyard. And I thought this was so great. Like, honestly, it's a normal vehicle that can be crewed. It's a normal train, but then it can be blocked. But if you can crew it with things from your graveyard, that's pretty cool. So if you're in a deck that's going to mill creatures into your graveyard, or wants to not have creatures in their graveyard, you might want to run this. I find it very, very interesting and dynamic, and it's something that is very flavorful and very on point, so I really appreciate it. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button. I have a whole playlist of custom Magic stuff. You guys should also check that out. And if you want to just stay up to date with everything going on my channel, hit that subscribe button and check out my other social links in the description down below, like my Discord, Twitter, all that. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.